Welcome back, everybody. We're here in Unity today, and if you've been keeping up, last week you wrote some dialogue. This week, it's time to get that dialogue into our game, and we're going to need some code to get it done. Now, in the interest of keeping things organized, in my assets I've created a new folder named Dialogue, and this is where I'll be keeping all of my scripts that help me put dialogue on the screen. Now, I've already been doing some experimenting to make sure all of this works, so I've already got message 1, 2, and 3 down here, but you can ignore those for now, as I'm going to start from scratch to show you how it's done. So as always, first we'll control-click, hover on Create, and then select C# script. The first dialogue example that I'm going to give you is the easiest. And this is dialogue that pops up at the very beginning of your game. This may not be the most immersive way to give the player information, but it is one surefire way to make sure that your player gets information that they need about your game before they get started playing. Some of this information could be a tutorial to explain how the game is played. The information could also include information about the world or their motive or their objective. But for now, let's give this script a name. And I'll call this Opening Dialogue. Then I'll double click on this script to open it up and get started. So as we get started here, let's do a little cleanup with what's given to us already. Now we do need a void start, so we can keep this. We don't need a void update, but we do need another function. So instead of deleting this entirely, let's just keep void, and let's change update to something that we will need in just a minute, which is on GUI. Capital O and on, and the letters G, U, and I are also capitalized, and it is all one word. You may also want to delete this comment above. Not that it will make any difference, but since this isn't the update function anymore, that doesn't really make any sense. Now let's kind of go back to the top. Right below our public class, I'm going to hit enter a couple of times to make some space to get started, and we need to set up some variables. First, let's create a variable that will actually hold the data which is your dialogue. Whatever we put inside of this variable is the text that will show up on screen. So we start like this: public string my message equals, and then the quotations here are pretty important. And right now I'm going to write hello world, and then end with another quotation mark to close that and a semicolon to finish the statement. Everything that's in orange, except for the quotation marks themselves, is what will show up in our dialogue that's on screen. And the public string, the fact that this is public, means we can change this text in the Unity editor without coming back into the code. Now there's some pros and cons to this, but for right now, we'll do this one as a public string. Now I'll hit enter and go down to my next line, and this time I'm going to create a private boolean, and I'm going to call this show message. And this is going to be equal to false. So a boolean is a true-false statement, and right now we are initializing this variable of show message. So when show message is true, we're going to see hello world on screen, and when show message is false, we won't. So the default state of this message is off. And don't forget to end this line in a semicolon. Now let's go down to our start function. The default state for showing our message is false, meaning that we won't see it. But we still have the start function. And in the start function, we will simply tell it that we want show message to be equal to true, and end with a semicolon. Pretty simple. When we start the game, we show the message. Now our on GUI will be the most complicated part of this, but it's still not too tough. So we're starting off with an if statement. If, and then I need a pair of parentheses. I'm going to type both my parentheses first, and then type the information I want inside of them. So if show message is equal to, and I need two equal signs here, if show message is equal to true, now I need a new set of curly brackets. This is almost like a function inside of a function. So inside of our GUI, remember GUI, our GUI or graphical user interface. So inside of our GUI, if show message is set to true, then inside of this if statement, I'll make a little room, and we need this. If GUI.button, new parentheses. Now we are putting in new rect, which is basically shorthand for a 2D rectangle. Now we need two new open parentheses, and then screen.width/2. Close one of our parentheses. Then we'll be typing -100. So this is designating the position of the button inside of which our text will be held. Then in parentheses, screen.height/2. So our screen width /2 -100 and then screen height /2 again. This is all about the positioning of our rectangular button. Next, we'll put in -100 and then +200, another comma, and another +200, and then close that parentheses. These numbers here represent the X, Y, and Z scale of your button. We can change these numbers later, change how tall or how wide our button will be. But now let's finish this off with a comma and then my message, written just as we wrote it up above here. So this will refer to the message that we wrote up here and show it inside of our button. Now we need to close this with 2 parentheses, and then we'll hit enter and go down below this and create a new curly bracket, and below that another closing curly bracket, and inside of here we will simply type show message equals false and end with a semicolon. So this last line right here of show message false is what will happen after this button that we created is clicked. So this stores our message. This creates a button with our message inside of it. And this says that after we click on that button, it will go away, taking the message off the screen. So at the moment, this looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit File and Save, and then I'm going to go back to Unity and actually apply this so that it will start working in our game. If you were to test play right now, it wouldn't pop up because it's not actually in our scene. It's just stored as an asset. To put it in our scene, let's just do it the easiest way possible. I'm going to Control-click in my hierarchy and click Create Empty, and I will simply rename this GUI because this is where I'm going to put my code that will give us our user interface with the text. So I'll simply drag and drop this onto the GUI game object in the hierarchy, and you can see with my GUI game object selected in the inspector, it says opening dialog script, and then my message is hello world. Let's go test it out. So when we start the game, there's a text box here that says the text that I typed in, and if I were to click on this box, the message will go away and I can get into the action of my game. One more thing to note, since we made this a public variable, we also see over here my message and whatever you typed. Now, if you were to change this, you could type whatever you want in here. I typed in a few new sentences. Let's go give that a test. Okay, you can see my new text is there, but it doesn't fit into the box very well. The code still works, but I'm not seeing everything that I typed because it just isn't designed to fit properly. Now there are a couple of ways that we could fix this, but we'll get into that more in the next video that we do, which is part 2 of our dialogue. It'll be right below this one in Schoology. So give this a try and then go look for that.